dished out another
Or
$60 or $70.
voice controlled stuff.
Seriously, why don't they have that stuff? Why don't they come up with things like that, like remotes, or items to? Why I don't have to get up and turn things on? Why don't they make things that I don't have to turn on? It's just easier.
They do, but usually you have to put a ring on them first.
Oh.
You can edit that out, right? Oh, shit.
What were we talking? I can't even remember what we were talking about. What we said we were going to say for the podcast.
Defector on
Oh, yeah.
CRT.
The there's the defector, the KGB defector there.
Yep.
Yeah. But before that, the critical race theory with the two different. Yeah, I got a whole. I listened to a whole bunch of whatever on that topic. There's a lot of videos.
Yeah, there is.
Just to kind of get an idea outside of what you've seen on the news and everything.
I did the same.
And after a whole lot of listening, I realized something about critical race theory that I didn't really pick up on initially, only because it's really become like a political talking point over the last year specifically.
Oh, yeah.
So all you hear is that it's just basically teaching America, or it's teaching kids that America is systemically racist. That's all I've heard. Till I got into it. I'll let you take it from here because you're the one that came up with the idea, just to see what you got out of this.
So I did. Well, first I had to find out. Because it's funny. I did the same thing. As soon as I heard, because I heard it was over the radio. It was just a topic of discussion, something they brought up quick. And it was so quick in passing when they brought it up that I'm like, it was one of those flag remarks that I'm like, the remark got flagged in my head, and I'm like, wait a minute, why aren't they diving into it? Why aren't they talking about it? So, what
was said?
Oh, just
not verbatim, but
it was just talking about the article, the little remark made. So the topic. Oh God, I can't even think. I'm trying to think of the proper word. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. They were talking about a lot of stuff that was going on, like the senator from Texas or whatever he is, grilling people about the governor or whatever he is.
Ted Cruz.
Is that his name? He's like, yeah. I think so, maybe. They were talking about that. They were talking about some of the things going on with Biden, some of the Steve, what was his name? The guy you said
Colbert?
Not Colbert. You sometimes you hate him, but he's right.
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro was brought up, and then they talked about the critical race theory being taught in schools and how states are pushing against it. And then they continued on with the discussion of other things. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like a general discussion. They mentioned
a comment, just like a bullet point in a big or whatever.
Yeah, and I was like, wait a minute. And then they never went back to it. They kind of transitioned into they segued into other topics of discussion, and I kind of just lost interest. So I did the same thing you did. I sat down. I actually didn't want to know what it was till I found out where it came from.
Right.
It was actually started like back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was more or less like, it was almost like a research study. It was brought up to be like, to point out where society and government and the social construct of just any class citizen, any color, how like the country has developed unknowingly to be racist. Like a good example is a lot of the articles always touch on the point of like single home housing areas. That this was a construct.
You mean like single parent housing?
No, not single parent, single home. And I'll explain it in a minute. single family home housing areas
Whoa.
were like subliminally, like they were created because nicer areas, you didn't have a lot of people, you didn't have 10 families living in one apartment building or one multi-family housing development. How in order to afford them, it was better quality, better area neighborhoods, and it was subliminally the thought behind the process was, well, if we do this, less fortunate people will be less inclined to be able to afford to live here, because underclassed, underprivileged, they can't afford these nice homes and these nice areas that only wealthier people can.
So
well, hold on. So then there was also that's a big argument that a lot of articles, a lot of stuff that I read into touched base on. Then there's also the judicial system, like how inner city neighborhoods are predominantly black, and the punishments, can't think of words. So like, all right,
Words are my Achilles heel.
so John Doe drives through white class suburbia, let's say,
Right.
and he's a white guy and he's doing 40 and a 30. He gets pulled over. Hey, listen, bud, you were speeding. Slow down. Have a nice day. Now, Jim Doe, the black guy, is driving to the same area doing 40. Would you mind stepping out of the car, sir? They were talking. They said that there was a lot of inequality going on in the system. So schools, laws, areas like housing development areas, stuff like that. There was all these things that were geared towards the predominantly white, higher privileged class. And this was all coming out of like the 70s and 80s, and this is the way they were seeing things. Mm-hmm. So that's where the critical race theory got its start. That's where it really snowballed. Then, now, from then to now...
And this is from the perspective of the less fortunate, or...
From the outside looking in.
Okay.
From the unknowing. So it was people who were realizing, wait a minute, this guy got... two guys, a black guy and a white guy, walk into a courtroom for speeding tickets. The white guy gets $200 fine, slap on the wrist, and told to go home. The black guy gets 2 points on his license, suspended license, pays $500, and now has a record. They were saying a lot of this was going on. Now, we know the time frame. 50s, 40s into the 50s, civil rights movement, 60s, a lot of stuff, a lot of pushback,
That was your transition period.
A lot of people were still holding on, even though they knew.
Mm-hmm. 60s into the 70s.
Exactly. Yeah. 60s into the 70s, a lot of people knew that all that was gone. No more back of the bus, no more separate water fountains, no more separate schools. All of that was abolished. But the system itself hadn't changed. They
right.
polished it up and put new words on it. So that's where the critical race theory took off. That's where it had its start.
Which makes sense back then.
Yeah, it did. Because, there was a lot of people, like, just a lot of stuff going on. And unfortunately, the facts are there. The stats
it's not
are there.
like something like that changes. Like overnight, people's mentality are all going to change too. Like one day, someone that's been a racist, maybe not even flat out racist, but someone that's been prejudiced in a system that was designed to be prejudiced for 20 or 30 years prior, and suddenly it's gone, and then they wake up the next morning and be like, everything's fine.
Yeah, it's
that's hard pressed to happen. I just don't see that happening. So it makes sense back then.
So moving forward, that's, and when I bring up a lot of these talking points that I read into, you're going to be like, oh yeah, because I was doing the same thing as I was reading through these articles. Growing up, hearing about kids in the projects, in the ghetto, whatever you want to call them, you know,
Just
like
a cliche thing.
underprivileged.
Right.
You know, when you went to most inner city schools that were predominantly black, the success rate, the graduation rate was much lower than that of.
When you heard underprivileged, like say we were back in high school, what was your initial thought? Or
My childhood.
no,
Sorry, it's the truth.
underprivileged. How did you define that back then?
Okay, see, now here's the thing, though. And this is where, like, as soon as I started reading into this, I'm like, this has got to be a topic. That's why I hit you up with
Before you go, I defined it as
Go ahead.
less money. And that's pretty much where it stopped.
See, now
But this is also someone that was raised in upstate New York. So
it's funny that you mentioned that because, and here's the kicker. So when you read into the critical race theory, like not a whole kind of construct, there you go, the entire construct of critical race theory, there's a lot of points back and forth where it's like,
what's wrong with you? Do you have COVID?
yeah, no, I don't have COVID.
It's fine. It's not my microphone.
It's Rich's.
Rich.
It's not. It's nuzzled it. So when I in high school,
Do you have an infatuation with that microphone?
I do.
Because like every show,
I'm fucking fiddling with it.
Yeah, you're rubbing it, you're nuzzling it, you're tickling it, whatever. Anyway, so back in high school,
It doesn't say no.
That's,
It can't say no.
it doesn't run away from me.
Don't run away from your feelings. No,
Can't catch me, gay thoughts.
Tom Cruise. So really quick, we'll jump forward. When I heard the term
Right.
underprivileged, I thought back to some of the areas, some of the kids I grew up with, of all ethnicities, black, white, Asian, Puerto Rican, Mediterranean, Eastern European.
But I mean, did it refer to financial or did it refer to inequality treatment or whatever?
To me, it was a demographic, an area.
Okay.
Even if you had, when you said underprivileged, my mind went to areas, not people, areas. Because even in some of the worst places that I lived, you had people that like, oh, look at the Johnson family over there. They're fucking rich. I don't know what they're doing in a school like this.
Right.
Or look at the Smith family, or look at the fucking, the Murphys.
Well, I think that's like in a lot of towns because I mean we got it here too. So
Because underprivileged to me wasn't a state. It was almost it wasn't a state of. What was it? Underprivileged to me was being made aware of what was above me,
right.
financially, socially, materialistically. Like to me, all the kids I grew up with, we had low end clothes. We shopped at low end stores. You know, when you saw this kid come in with a pair of fucking Nikes back in the 90s, which back then were like $100, now they're like $300, and your pair of shoes cost $5, me and my 20 friends, we felt underprivileged because our families worked low-level jobs. We bumped shoulders with everybody. That was underprivileged to me. Going to a neighbor's house, going to a kid's house, the rich kid's house, black, white, Asian, because I've hung out with all of them. I knew every color, every race to have rich people, and that made me realize I'm underprivileged.
Right.
I have shitty books. I don't have private tutoring. I didn't go to private schools. I'm seeing these people. I'm rubbing elbows with these folks, and that was underprivileged to me. That made me realize where I was, my life at the time, who I was growing up with, where my family status was like. That was underprivileged. So, and like I said before, reading into this, reading all these topics, seeing these things, it started to like, oh wow. You know, it wasn't, and now it's gotten better. Before I get into that, so like move forward to today now. Let's jump really far ahead. Where Trump, during the Trump administration, the last year, he started instituting all that. What's the words they used? Equality training. You know what I'm talking about? Like they started putting police officers through different law enforcement, the government, a lot of people, a lot of agencies, a lot of levels of anybody, of any employer, any like place, schools. They started going through like these training courses, these
to be more racially sensitive.
Yes, racially sensitive training. I guess you could say is a good way to put it. And I didn't hear nothing about it. I mean, I heard something about it, but I'm like, oh, it's cool. You know, there are some black cops, there's some white cops, there's some Asian cops. We've all experienced that cop who he was the fucking jock in high school, and that's as far as he went. He didn't graduate high school, didn't graduate college, couldn't do anything with his life, couldn't even get a job at the mill factory or whatever. So he's pissed off. So he decided to become a cop, and you know, the girl he used to have a crush on who dumped him because he failed high school. So I'm gonna give her a ticket. Shit like that, you know. But
that's quite the stretch, but I get the idea.
Now, the statistics, though, and that the reason I bring up that, and it is a stretch, but the reason I bring that up is because when you read a lot of statistics, fact checking, there was. It's as shameful as it is to acknowledge it. It's not shameful, as discouraging as it is to acknowledge it now. You know, with everything going on, it's like, man, I didn't see it back then.
Right.
But that's because everybody where I grew up, we all went through it. It didn't feel like it was black versus white versus Asian versus yellow versus brown versus red. It just felt like we were targeted. Or the demographic, the areas were targeted.
By who?
By anybody who made more money. By anybody who was more influential in the job, in the office, in the government, in the law enforcement.
When you say targeted, what do you mean targeted? Like,
well, look at it this way. Good example. We use Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. I know you have. Have you seen that movie?
I don't think so.
Okay. Shout out to
I don't
Fast
care
and
about
Furious.
that. I think I watched one of them.
So there's a scene in the movie Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. It's very early in the beginning, almost the first 20 minutes of it.
Right.
Kid who's got single mom, dad in the military, who's across the ocean. His mom is kind of a trampy looking kind of lady. He's got an old muscle car, like an old Oldsmobile or something like that he's beefed up. Races some rich kid in a fucking football jersey who's dating the head cheerleader in his dad's Dodge Viper. Mm-hmm. They go through this housing development. They're racing through. There's all the construction and shit. They're building these nice, rich-looking houses. They end up destroying a bunch of shit. They get into a car accident. Well, all three of them are sitting in the police station.
Right.
And it's funny, too, because he's obviously Hispanic. The Hispanic lead cop is like, pulls him in. And mommy and daddy of the rich kid and mommy and daddy of the rich girl are out there, oh, hey, come on, let's go. They're getting up and leaving, and the cop, who's Hispanic, looks at the white kid and goes, see them? Mommy and daddy got money. They're going to walk. They're not even going to get a slap on the wrist. They're going to, like, nothing ever happened. Mm-hmm. You're an easy ticket. You're an easy win. You're a slam dunk. Because he's got no money. He can't afford a lawyer. Mm-hmm. He comes from ghetto. He's trash, whatever. He's white trash, whatever you want to call it. It's an open shot case. They can nail him to the wall. He's got nothing. He's got priors, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. This kid has no chance of winning. That's the point I'm making. Like, easy target.
Right.
So now you got, like, we'll use some funny stuff here. Public defenders. In our area, public defender doesn't have too many cases. Nothing too serious. Mm-hmm. Speeding tickets, this and that. You want to get a public defender. Oh, assault charge because you got drunk and beat up some dude who's banging your girl. Or you woke up to you banging your girl, whatever. He's right next to you. You're like, oh, God, what are you doing? And he starts beating your ass while he's banging your girl.
Woke up and he's banging you.
Yeah, I know, right? So you fight him and then you get arrested for assaulting him.
Right. Which is actually probably what would happen.
Yeah. But that's like the public defender in this area. Nothing too hard.
Right.
Maybe a few cases here and there. Go to somewhere like the boroughs where you've got people walking in a line waiting for their turn to meet the public defender who's probably got a couple of hundred cases he's got to see a day. Mm. He can't. And that's where, like, okay, do not let me forget that. Please go back to that.
The public defender thing?
The public defender thing, and I'll explain why.
Gotcha, go.
So, open shut cases. You can nail anybody because the court's just going to go guilty, guilty, agree to a lesser charge, guilty, guilty, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you got an actual lawyer? Well, now we got to go through the whole process.
Right.
Which, with the judicial system the way it is, the way it's overloaded, the way it's understaffed, it's got too much going on. It's got to push as much out as possible.
Right.
So when you've got someone who's willing to fight, now you're holding up the system for however many months it takes while you've got more cases building up, building up, building up. It's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. 2 steps forward. You never get ahead of it. So the critical race theory in regards to that, and it's supposed to take out, it's supposed to gear the system towards 100% equality. Doesn't matter if it's rich kid from the suburbs or poor kid from the ghetto.
Right.
They both get tried equally and fairly. But now it goes back to that. The poor kid, let's say he gets a lawyer. Can he afford the best lawyer? No. He affords a lawyer with minimal training who doesn't have a paralegal team. Mm-hmm. Rich kid gets the lawyer with the paralegal team who can go through 50 books in one night to find everything to win. The critical race theory, in that point alone, is trying to say that's not fair. And it's not.
Right.
But the critical race theory, titled Critical Race Theory, puts the word race in it, so they no longer gear it towards white, white, black, 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 white, black, doesn't matter. It's inequality because this system is geared more towards the underprivileged, who are predominantly other ethnicities other than white. Mm-hmm. This is more towards the white community.
So basically it's just by what you described, critical race theory is taking out this whole racial thing, and a systemic racism like definition almost by default, just because of how it's laid out, everything you just described.
It's saying that the system has racial inequality because of the numbers.
Right.
So if you have an area that is predominantly black, predominantly Asian, mm-hmm. predominantly Indian,
and that's the number that is getting charged for whatever.
And you look now,
and all you do is look at the numbers and be like, look, 63% of the people that were arrested in this section were black, or they were whatever. And then someone comes in and goes, that's racist, without knowing anything about the area.
Now, do I agree with that? No, I don't agree with how they would come. That's where the critical race theory faults. It doesn't look at everybody. It picks that out, and it's not that it's not trying to. It's that's where the grounds of its theory comes from. It's called the critical race theory because it's based on race, not demograph. And that might not be the right word I'm looking at. I'm trying to say, but it doesn't look at the fact that even though, so we'll shoot some random numbers here. You got an area that's 40% black, 30% Hispanic, 20% Asian, 10% white. It's going to look at the fact that because the majority of all arrests are of indigenous people, indigenous races, mm-hmm. It's a racist system.
Right.
But it's not looking at the crimes. It's not looking at the fact that, now I'm not saying this is the case, but let's say White Tim and Black Tom are in a car and do a drive-by. They're going to see that a black man was arrested.
Is the black man an uncle?
Black Tom Cassidy. What's your superpower? Cultural appropriation. Deadpool 2. It's not going to look at the fact that there was a white and a black guy in the car. They're going to look at it the critical race theory looks at it as another black statistic.
Right.
Black people were involved in a system that they're going to get struck harder for. So now,
and this has to do with you were talking about the public defender before.
Yeah. So, where was I going with that? My head's spinning. Well, no, because I read so much. I absorbed so much. And it was crazy because, like, I could see where they're trying to, like, so underprivileged. It's, when you look at a house.
Breathe, Charlie.
When you buy a home.
Right.
And you look at a house, you're looking at buying two houses. Both of them are $50,000. Mm-hmm. This house on your right needs $5,000 worth of work, and it'll resell for $80,000. This house on your left needs $30,000 worth of work, but it can resell for $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking at the final picture.
Right.
Oh, let's throw that quick $5,000 in and get that house flipped.
Mm-hmm.
They're not thinking $30,000. So you spend $50,000 to buy this house. You put $30,000 into it. You've now bought the house for $80,000. You sell it for $100,000. Right house. You buy it for $50,000. You put $5,000, and let's say now that house is worth $75,000. So you go from $55,000 to a $75,000 home. You're still making $20,000.
Right.
On both, but they don't see this. They see more money being spent. That's more money to invest for a long-term investment. This is a short-term gain, short-term investment, short-term gain, minimum gain, whatever. Can't think of that. And that's where
subtitled things spinning again.
We need that for real. That's where like the underprivileged concept comes from. And that's where the critical race theory is trying to change it. And that was one of the parts that I found myself going, okay, I guess I could see that. If they took the time, if the government, the educational system, whatever, actually decided to step in and put the required amount of work and dollars into these underprivileged inner city schools, you would see, staff them up, give them the newest books. You're going to see that turnaround. You're going to see that fucking 20% graduation rate go up to 75% graduation rate, rather than investing into the upper privileged, upper class, higher privileged, more privileged schools, rather than invest that money in there, where you're going to see a 65% graduation rate go up to 70% graduation rate.
Doesn't the higher privileged schools are predominantly private schools, aren't they?
Yes.
But those are privately funded. They're not.
And that's another flaw with the critical race theory. They don't look at it in that sense.
Right.
It's funded. That's all they're looking at.
Right.
Underprivileged schools are bare minimum funded. They're not looking at who's investing.
And those are also, usually the underprivileged schools are the ones that are in large cities or boroughs where there's a multitude of schools.
We'll use you just said the boroughs. Let's use the boroughs. We'll run some random fucking numbers here. 11 million people live in the boroughs in New York City. Okay? 11 million people. In your lifetime, you're not going to meet that many. You're not even going to see that many people.
No. I think what they say, the average person through their life meets, what was it, 1,000 people or something like actually meets them, not just walking by. Or
let's throw some. Let's use that number.
Or 11, maybe it's not even 1,000.
We'll use just for basic.
All right.
Basic fucking running here. People can fact check all they want. 11 million people in New York City. Right. 11 million people. You are going to meet that many people in your lifetime. You're going to meet 1,000.
Right.
You are going to meet literally a 100th or one. What times 1,000 equals a million? 10,000.
Yes.
Am I right? If I'm fucking right. If I'm right, I'm awesome. Because now I'm curious. Fuck you.
A couple mathematicians.
I know, right?
I'm a wizard.
1,000 times.
Fact checker Charlie.
No, 1,000 times 1,000.
Okay.
Oh, no. Okay, I was right.
It's got a fact check.
1,000 times 10,000 equals 10 million.
Okay.
And that was right off the top of my head, fuckers.
So 1,000 times 11,000.
You are literally... Are
you going to puke?
Fuck you. You, in your lifetime, you're not going to meet 1,000th of the percentage of people in the city.
Right. But what's that have to do with graduating class? You just went off on a tangent and then forgot what direction you were going.
Well, no, like
I
so
went over a hill,
when you
down a hill,
so when you
back
think
up a hill.
okay, here we go.
And
I got where I was going with this. 11 million people. How many schools do you think that needs? We have how many people in our little town?
We have, well, we got a population of like, Kanjo alone, I think, is like 25 or 2,600. And yeah, we have one school.
One school system.
All right, so just
for 2,500 people.
Roughly on that, yeah.
That's if you do the math. 11 million people,
So based on
10,000
that,
schools.
yeah.
You would need 250,000 schools.
Right. You're not sure about that, are you?
No, I'm just thinking like, what do you think they're going to want to invest in?
Maybe 25 grand, but.
We got like there was a school.
Yeah, and that's that's not really at fault of the government. I mean, you could make the argument and be like, well, they have how many in defense spending? Billions of dollars defense spending, where we spend more than
in the next 23 countries behind us.
Yeah, something
combined.
like that.
Jeff Daniels.
Okay. So there's that. You could make that argument, I suppose, even though I think that's a completely different
but that's where
part
like,
of the finances.
So the critical race theory, the reason I bring that up, I'm sorry to cut you off, is the association behind it feels if you're going to give little old Kanjo a $1 million budget a year with, let's say, 300 kids in the entire K through 12 system.
Right.
You have PS 100 who has 1,000 kids. If you're giving $1 million to a school system, K through 12 with 300 kids, you should be giving 369. You should be giving
K through 12. They I think there's more around 1,000.
Just random
either
numbers.
way, whatever. Okay.
You should be giving $3.5 to $4 million to PS 100 alone.
Right.
Because then that money equates, when you factor it all out, let's say 1,000, let's say 300 kids in the whole K through 12 program, $1 million. That's $90,000 a student, let's say. $90,000 a student. When you give that same $1 million budget to 1,000 schools, you're now spending $1,000 a kid.
Right.
And that's where the critical race theory is, like, theorist or association behind it is like, that's why there's still racism. That's why there's still black on black crime. That's why the black community is underprivileged. The Asian community, the Hispanic community, the Latino community, the Italian community, you name them. That's why they're underprivileged. That's why there's still racism. Because you have a school in an area that's predominantly white versus a school in an area that's predominantly black. And you're going to put all this money into this little old school versus this money, into this much money into this grand school. Mm-hmm. That's where they feel like, and I kind of agree. When I stopped and thought about it, I'm like, shit, it would change things. Now, is it going to change the amount of crimes committed by whatever skin color? Yellow, brown, black, red, white? No, it's not going to change that. Because with this association behind the critical race theory, they're preaching that it is race-based, even if it's unknown, which is another thing that a point that I read that I was like, that's fucking bogus. Bullshit. I don't believe it. I don't agree with it. 100%. But then that makes me a racist. And the reason, I'll explain that in a minute. So they don't think about it like that. And that's where when people hear that, and with the K through 12 that they're trying to introduce, a lot of states have banned it. A good handful of states have banned it. Other states
race theory
being taught in schools, yes. Which I'm kind of on the fence about. There are points I agree with, and then points like that I don't.
Right.
Like changing history class to teach less about the whiteness of history and more of the rest. I don't agree with teaching less. I agree with teaching more of other ethnicities, but I don't agree with teaching any less than of what we've already been taught in history.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no the critical race theory. Also, one of the comments I read, one of the articles, one of the speakers, I forgot, Edinburgh or something like that was the last name. I'm not 100% sure. Made the comment that, it's the reason America is systemically racist because it was founded on racism.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't founded on racism.
No.
America was founded on tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no slave owning. I mean, there was slaves, but there was black slave owners and white slave owners before the founding of this country.
Yeah.
And it's sad that a system of control that was brought over to America is now idealized as only American.
No, I think a lot of people brought that up. Was it the last one or a couple episodes ago? Whatever it was, where that whatever I said was racism is uniquely American, which it clearly is not.
No, but that's everybody's talking about how America is racist, and now that's what they're trying to preach, that America is racist.
Right.
When we weren't even the first. We're not original. We're not the original. We followed the crowd.
The only thing that we have done, and really original in, is become a republic of states to have a government to give each of the states their own governing power and function within one giant country, basically, and actually have freedoms, and done it successfully for the last 250 some years.
Yeah,
so that's the only thing we've really got.
And that's another thing too that the critical race theory capitalizes on. And I find I'm saying it right now, and we shouldn't be. You've even said it unknowingly, and that's where the theory. Another thing, a point of racism comes from the critical race theory, the unknown racism behind what we do and say. Mm-hmm. We did not own slaves.
Right.
Americans in history owned slaves. We didn't own anybody.
But that's been preached many times. But
we find ourselves talking about we as a country. We, when we were founded, we didn't start racism. We as a country did have slaves. No, we did not have slaves.
No, I was just lucky enough to be born in a country who might have had slavery 100 years ago.
Over 100 years ago at this point.
Segregation, less than 100 years ago. That's fine. That was in the past. That's not where I am right now. That's not where I've ever been, but that's not where we are right now.
Sorry, I'm a little jittery. This nectar of Satan, it's really kicking in. Unofficial. Today's our unknown sponsor is Nas, the nectar of Satan. I think you eat asparagus.
Do
I take garlic butter? Do I take it?
You just
subtitles.
You just described pretty much everything from one aspect of critical race theory that I delve into, and it's pretty much the only thing I really knew about this whole time going over it, especially because of the talking point it became. The more I actually looked into it, though, critical race theory started years ago as A and turned into B. It really split. It didn't turn into it, but it split into A and B. Mm-hmm. A was critical race theory, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, or before the last 10 to 15 years, was put out there to push further education of racial, what have you, violence, segregation, everything. Because there's so many things that haven't been taught in school about it. The one that's always dropped all the time is the Tulsa Massacre. Don't ask me the year, but that was It was Please look it up.
Because I'm interested in what you have to say. Because I did read articles about the Tulsa Massacre.
Yeah, bring it up and just read a quick synopsis on it.
Okay.
That's one that's brought up a lot. That's not taught in schools. I didn't know anything about it until after. Granted, we're in an upstate New York place, so but again, regardless of where I am, that's not really brought up. So critical race theory was supposed to be we need more of this, of what's happened in history, in American history, because it is American history, to be taught in schools, because we briefly touch on the 60s and like segregation. We talk about segregation as a whole, and yes, it existed. Here it was. Moving on. And that's really all we got. We didn't get, I mean, they dive deep into the Fertile Crescent, Egypt. We dive deep into World War II, more than one, but the World Wars. We dive deep into these big talking points, these big glamorous and romantic things in history. But when it comes to talking about things where people might not want to hear about it, we don't really touch much on that. And that's not even really having to do with black or anything. That's just in general. Now, really in the last 10, 15, 20 years, now we have all these new things like school shootings and stuff. But because of social media, it's kind of hard to keep that out. So I think that alone is going to be a big thing in shifting what is taught in schools, because you can't get away from it. It's all over social media. There's no hiding any of that. Now, before what it's become, that's what it seemed to have been. It wasn't a talking point until it was politicized. That's where this new thing of critical race theory became. It's making America look systemically racist, because that's what politicians started calling it. The left. Mm-hmm. This is systemically racist. But again, we've covered this in the election chats we've had, where that's what they're pushing, is to take groups of people and be like, you're a victim. You're a victim. I just talked today to a friend of Amanda who is Puerto Rican from the islands. And I asked her, we got a good conversation. I go, that same question I asked you. I go, is America systemically racist? She goes, no, I don't think so. Critical race theory became politicized. That's where it got the stigma of being this, let's teach America that America is systemically racist. That's where the right came in, the Republicans, and they saw that as, this is an attack on us, this is reverse racism. You want to teach my kids that because you are white, you're racist. That's where that argument came from. Critical race theory at that point split into two different things. Instead of being this thing where let's teach everybody, this shit happened, now it became a blanket cover, a statement to just cover anything to do with racism. And because of politics, unfortunately, the biggest thing that came out of that was America is systemically racist.
See, folks, that's everything I just said, but much more eloquently put together.
Yeah. and probably about 5 or 6 times shorter.
I know, right? Now, real quick, let's talk about the Tulsa Race Massacre. The Tulsa Race Massacre took place on May 31st and June 1st, 1921, when mobs of white residents, some of whom had been deputized and given weapons by city officials, attacked black residents and destroyed homes and businesses of the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma, United States.
Right.
Now,
there's a specific there was more to that, like what led up to the actual attack, and I can't remember. This was like a month or two ago. I actually heard about it when it first started to really pick up in the news.
Real quick, you'd never heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre before that?
No. And that's been said.
Get ready for a fun one, guys.
And that's been said a lot through a lot of news facets, and be like, no, I bet black kids have not heard of the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Hold on. My head's fucking spinning. I don't know if it's where I grew up or because I went to almost like 20 different schools.
Maybe.
I can genuinely say I learned about the Tulsa Race Massacre back in school, in history class. I learned we did a lot about not even just the black community, the Tulsa Race Massacre, the Native American community. There's another one. I forgot the name of it because I'm stupid and can't remember history very well. But there was another one where
your sons are going to see you say that about yourselves, and they're going to grow up thinking that.
No, my kids are smart. They're smarter than me. I learned Native Americans. There was another such similar massacre. It wasn't so much a massacre. It was the KKK rolled into a Native American town and tried to drive them out. Big mistake. And I learned this in high school. I was in high school. I learned about this. This Native American community, they met them like 500 community members strong. 50 white KKK hoods coming in. You got nothing but Native Americans with shotguns and guns and revolvers and pistols and everything. By the time the KKK was gone, a few of them still had clothes on, and a bunch of them were on the ground beating the living shit out of them.
Oh, sodomy.
I'm just saying, like, I learned about that. I learned about a lot of the civil rights, a lot of the racism, a lot of the segregation, a lot of the stuff during the slave days. A lot of the schools I went to, I remember learning these things.
No, I don't remember learning it.
And that's where I don't get it. Like, I found myself agreeing with the fact that, yes, like you said much more eloquently than I did, there needs to be, this stuff happened. It needs to be taught.
Right.
I don't agree with teaching less of what happened that they already do teach, but I do agree with teaching more of what they don't talk about, what has happened.
Which, here's the thing that kind of just, it doesn't make sense to me. And maybe this is just because it's two different groups. This is like more of a Black Lives Matter Antifa thing. You want to teach critical race theory, the things that have happened, and what's said all the time is because it's part of history, it needs to be taught. I 100 whatever, the most I can agree with it, I do. Here's the problem. At the same time, maybe not the same movement or whatever, but there's a lot of these other groups that want specific statues and things tore down. They don't want certain things like brought up in school because it's racism. Because it promotes racism. Different generals and whatnot. And in the southern states, south of Mason-Dixon borderline.
Yep.
They take those down because it's racism, promotes racism, and it should be abolished. That's a complete conflict of interest there. You want racism taught and the things that happened that were horrible, but you don't want the things that happened that were horrible and racism taught. Like, that doesn't make any, again, maybe it's two different groups, but to me, just looking at it, just as a broad spectrum, that doesn't make any logical sense.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because I enjoyed it. I didn't laugh as much as I thought I would, but I did enjoy it. It was, Dave Chappelle's newest stand-up. What's it called?
I know he's got a new one out.
It's his last one with Netflix. I forgot what it's called. But he talks about how at one point, near the end of his bit, his special, he talks about how a black slave owner, how he had started out as a slave and became a black slave owner, and his ways of ownership.
Is this a skit or is this?
No, it's a legit story. He says true story. This is going off what Dave Chappelle said. True story. It's about this black slave who becomes a slave owner, who is so far out with the way he does it that even the white slave owners, he says at one point, are like, "Yo, man, what? Hold up." He goes, the reason he brings it up is because, it was a black man who became successful in a system he knew was successful. And that was owning slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, and I was like, but I'm confused. You won't hear about that. You won't learn about that. And that goes back to what you were just saying about you want to teach racism existed, but you don't want to teach racism existed. You want the community, the educational system, to preach more about a lot of the racist things that happen, but you don't want them to talk about black slave owners who were, on some levels, much more horrific than the white slave owners.
The same thing can be said about people who are against capitalism and want socialism and things like that, but then they're out with their Nike shoes or Vans or whatever, texting on their Apple or whatever phone, like, we gotta fight this, all capitalism things.
Yeah.
And they're like, capitalism's dead, send, or post, or whatever the hell. That makes no logical sense, but do your thing, I guess.
Well, I think he also said something during that story about how, like people in the North, like the country's so divided, that they're attacking anybody who's predominantly white, whether they're racist or not. They're the race. If they say they're not racist, they're racist. If they don't agree with what people are talking about right now, they're automatically racist.
And that's that peg thing we were talking about. Once you get pegged with that, it's like, what do you say?
Well, he talks about how people in the North didn't own slaves.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the line. That's why the line was there.
The Mason-Dixon borderline.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like, and it's messed up. But that's just a little side squirrely thing that I just thought about because of the Dave Chappelle thing. But I segued that by accident because of the whole, he was telling the story and about what you said. No, but like I said, there are points about it where I'm like, I can see that being reasonably logic. Like underprivileged, the law system. I don't see I can't say I don't see a flaw with the system because it doesn't matter what color you are. If you got the money to afford the right lawyer, you're going to win. Right. And going back to the public defender thing, I mean, they're underpaid and overworked. They're not going to fight.
It's that cliche, the guy with the messy hair with a briefcase, papers falling out, walks in like, sure, my third case today.
Yeah. Yeah. I really can't, I don't know. But then talking about where, like, going back to the critical, talking about that as a point, critical race theory is like, look at the NCAA. It's like, you don't hear about what that is for. And I bring that up because it's NCAA is like an organization that funds the.
You're talking about NAACP?
Yeah, NAACP. It's for the for basketball players,
right?
Who are black, to help them with college and basketball and professional career and a successful career in professional sports. I mean, you won't see like critical race theories like this is a good thing, but you won't see an underprivileged white kid or Asian kid or Puerto Rican kid get the same help because they're not black.
Here's something I just thought of.
But if you try to give that kid, that white, Puerto Rican, that Asian, you're considered a racist.
And this might just fan the flames, but you've heard about the $1 trillion coin they want to mint. And okay, no.
No, right. I haven't. But go ahead. I'm definitely curious.
Okay, so
$1 trillion coin.
This I guess this could be used as a segue too, but so just really quick before I take it back to what we were talking about, the government wants to mint $1 trillion coin made of platinum. Doesn't mean platinum, like the value of platinum is going to go up. They're just going to make a coin worth $1 trillion to then deposit. This is really a bridge version of it, but then deposit said coin into the Federal Reserve to boost the amount of money instead of owing. I think our national debt is like 16.3 something trillion. So we've reached the ceiling of our debt. You can't spend anymore, which would mean we'd have to default on our money, which would either make the dollar worth a lot or drop the dollar worth like nothing. So what they want to do is just add this coin, create this coin, mint it, and then put it in our reserve to knock the debt from 16 point whatever trillion to 15 point whatever trillion, thus giving us another $1 trillion to play with for our the yearly finances that whatever the nation plays with. Now that's really a bridge version, but if we can do that for the national debt, how come we can't do that and add that, let's say 100 billion, not even $1 trillion, into inner city education, since we're just making up money anyway?
Why is money even a point? Why? Like,
because money, you have to have that currency, that note that says, basically, it's money doesn't have worth except for what you think it's worth. It's basically a glorified IOU. Here's $100. What can you get with an actual? I don't have cash on me, but with an actual dollar bill. If you look at it and be like, what's that going to do? That can't fix me dinner. That can't go to the store for me. That can't do this. That can't do that. So if you think it's worth something, cool. That's what it's. I mean, that's the nation views money as basically an IOU. Hey, I got $100. If I give you this, you give me that. So what's money going to do? You print out $1 billion, give it to a school, or like $100 million, give it to a large school system. You have this to play with to get your new computers, to get your new textbooks, to pull in whatever.
The amount of teachers you need, the amount of equipment you need.
Salaries for different whatever. You can fix the area around the school or fix the school itself, whatever. Now you can do all that with that money. We can make up money out of thin air for... which, mind you, this isn't the first time that they've, anyway, talked about the $1 trillion coin. They did it in 2013. They didn't actually do it, but they talked about doing it, which it's interesting. The coin thing is an interesting thing.
I'd love to see this coin.
It's very generic looking. I saw a design of it. I don't think they did it yet, but I by the sound of it, they're going to. They're going to have to by the 18th of this month, unless they can come up with we're going to raise the debt. So, I don't see... I mean, again, I don't know much about when it comes to our national debt and just funding schools, because the way, because there's only two ways that the nation can get, there's only two ways that the government can get money. It's either through, or after our taxes. Once they tax us, all right. There's two ways that the nation can get money. There's the taxes they take from us every year or quarter, however you file it, which makes up a certain percentage or a certain amount of money. After that, if they need more, they have stocks and bonds. You give us $100 now, and we'll give you this piece of certificate that says we'll pay you back in a year or 5 or 10. We'll give you your $100 back plus a little extra. That's how that works. Mm-hmm. If they still don't have enough, we borrow money, loans, China or whoever. So that's the only way we can get extra money past our taxes. So once you reach your limit of that, you reach the debt limit, which is from borrowing money. Now you run into a problem. We still have to run the country, and we don't have the money to do it. So what do? You either default on your loan, basically, on a grand scale.
I'd love to see someone come and collect.
Or you do the magical wizard thing, which, boy, if we could all do this. Oh, I need $100,000. I don't have it. Well, I just so happen to be able to make this coin here, and the Federal Reserve can say, or the government can say, this, or the National Treasury can make a coin and make it worth whatever they want. The original idea for doing this was specifically for collectors of coins. We can come out with this $5 coin, and it's a collector's item. We're only going to put out 100 or 500 or 1,000 or whatever, and we'll make it worth $5. That's it. And they do that. There's nothing in any laws that says the National Treasury has a certain limit of what they can make a coin worth. So if they wanted to come out and make one coin worth $1 trillion, they are completely within their legal limits to do that, which is kind of wonky and crazy if you think about it, because, I mean, sure, there are checks and balances, I'm sure, but just the idea that, well, we're in debt, let's just make the money.
I was going to say, that's what I...
It just, like, the average Joe Schmo would be like, what?
If that's the case, then why are we struggling at all? Why do we have debt? If our national treasury could sit there and say, hey, we made $1 trillion coin, pay it to China. There, $1 trillion we owe China's paid off.
Problem with that. Just paying it out, and this probably goes along with the whole school thing too. But again, like I said, this might just fan the flames over the whole thing. The problem with that is, now that we've done that, we just devalued our money. Because the whole idea with a $1 trillion coin is we could lower our debt with the debt ceiling we already have, allowing us to work within that $1 trillion again, which technically would not, it would not raise our debt. It would keep the value of the money the same. And then when the next year comes around, they rework the budget for the nation. They can just basically take that coin and smelt it down like it never existed. So it's this weird loophole that they can work with to do it. It's like remember years ago when you could claim your dog in your tax return? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like that idea where there's this weird loophole that's like, well, let's just do it because we can. But the difference is the nation, like the taxes, the federal government or the IRS came in and be like, no, you can't do that. There's no one above our government to be like, you can't do that. So it's this weird fucking thing. That was one of the things I looked into after like the critical race theory. I heard more about this $1 trillion coin that is like, oh, we're going to put it in the Federal Reserve. I'm like, what? You can do that? What? How does that make any logical? Like, that doesn't make sense. So I looked into it. I'm like, they can do that. Boy, that's a dirty move, though. That's like a 30 lives cheat in Contra. Like, the fuck? How do you do that? What do you mean? It's like, well, you can still die. Just do it a lot more.
That's fucked.
Like, what the fuck? So yeah, I don't know if that's like that was a weird like kind of semi segue into that talking point. But I mean, if you can do it for the national debt, why can't you do it for inner city schools and stuff? Because then you could.
Why charge money at all? I mean, if that's the case, tell the school, hey, look we're gonna up your budget plan.
But that's money. That's what it is.
Or not even that. Listen, we're not gonna make you pay for a year. Take all the money you save and reinvest it in yourself.
What? Who? Them paying? They don't pay.
Schools don't spend money?
Well, they spend money, yeah. Oh, you talking? Well, now you need all these because it's not just like the school goes to the Magic School Store and gets everything. I mean, you got to go to different multitude.
Magic School Store.
Yeah, you got to go to a multitude of companies like just for desks, for waxes and things, for whatever repairs you have to do, just basic Home Depot and everything, for all your buses. All fuel that you need for them. You need all the sports uniforms. You need all the desks and whatnot. If I already said that, I can't remember. But like,
but it's okay.
Electronics. You need all your microscopes. All these scientific. Like there are so many companies. You're now doing that. Noble idea. Problem is now
Star
you're
Trek.
asking hundreds, possibly hundreds of companies. Hey, can you take this cut, which would be a big payday for you?
Tax write-off. Star Trek had the right idea. Everything's for free as long as you put in the work.
But I think the problem with the tax write-off, though, you see where I'm going with this, though. Like, if there's no tax write-off, now you're saying, well, now the government has to pay you to do whatever. So now the government's not getting money in from the schools. So how are they going to pay out to all these companies? See,
good catch.
It's just like a constant thing. So you can't just. I guess I'm just kind of answering this thing as we go. Really
I still
vaguely,
think we should just print up our own money.
If the fucking Reserve can do it, or the Treasury, why can't we? No, they come knocking at your door. It's like, oh, you're counterfeiting money. It's like, what the fuck do you think you're doing coming out with a coin this big saying, this is $1 trillion. This is my $1 trillion can. I'm going to deposit it. I'm going to take this down to my bank tomorrow or the day after because it's a holiday tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'm going to say, can you put this in my account? It's worth $1 trillion. And I'm not even going to put my pinky to my mouth. And then they're going to look at me and go, you're fucking stupid. But hey, the Treasury can do it.
The ARC is right around the corner.
They're going to tell me that the Treasury, they're just going to say I'm fucking stupid.
Yeah, basically. They are. They're going to look at us and go, you guys are stupid.
Well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, but the Treasury can do it. Why can't I?
What does it take to become a treasury?
A treasurer? Well,
A treasury.
You have to have a green nightcap hat with a sword and the shield. And whenever you find something, you have to lift it above your head.
If I could legally create a treasury of my own.
Well, that would be a nation.
So I needed a nation to become a treasury.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd have to buy a piece of property, which even if you buy it, you still have to pay taxes on it. So even though you bought it, even in cash, you still have to pay the government every year for that piece of land. And if you don't, they can take it away. So
You don't own it.
as George Carlin said, you don't fucking own anything. They got you by the balls. Oh, God rest his soul.
The biggest
Was
piece, the
ahead
best
of his
piece,
time.
very ahead of his time. The best piece I could ever remember him talking about was Snapper. Remember that? He's like, Snapper back in my day used to mean pussy. Now it's a lawnmower. Boy, that's a nice piece of Boy, that's a nice snapper you're riding. Look at that pussy go across the yard. It's just dragging its feet. I forgot how he said it, but it's fucking funny.
See, that's why the fucking KGB's defecting. They wanted to see George Carlin. They came over here, and then he fucking died after.
I know. Selfish prick. No, I'm just kidding. God rest his soul. Miss that guy.
Yeah. That's Yeah, you said you listened to that, right?
Yeah, I did.
Step by step. I wrote it down, but step by step. Are we not in that as we speak?
Look,
just just looking at it, just like each step at a time is like, boy, you can easily be like, yeah. It's a connected dot thing. I'm like, oh boy.
We started. You said we'll say over the podcast. I'll reiterate what I said for the folks at home. To you out on the porch. When you hear the timeline and the years and the plan and the way it worked out, it fucking really got. I got a cold chill up my back thinking about it because the 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
Then the fucking next step after that and the step after that. It's like, oh boy.
The whole, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a YouTube video. There's a long version. It's like an hour long. But
We'll put the link in the description.
I'll put the short one in the description because it specifically talks about the four
And
steps
you can find the long one.
Yeah.
From that.
The short version is like 12 or 13 minutes long. It's real short.
I was almost 15, I thought.
Whatever it is, it's short.
I don't know. He did the secret cell code to me, and I fell asleep and woke up with a metal arm, and people calling me Bucky.
Victor 4 B.
Shut up, Meg. Remember that?
It's the four steps basically to break down a nation from within. It's called a soft war, is what it is. It's a war on information. And he goes in the video, he's talking about how in Hollywood it's romanticized to have intelligence. Espionage.
Secret agents.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why America and Hollywood loved the James Bond movies.
Yes. He specifically brought up James Bond.
I think he says it's like 10 to 15% of it
is actual espionage.
Is actual espionage like that.
But what actually happens is is basically a soft war. And it's a war on morality, law. It's a war on making people think a certain way. It's all real abridged. Like I said, I'll put the link in the video. But step one is demoralization, which that's the one he said takes 15 to 20 years.
Yep.
So that's the one. Demoralization of a nation is implanted in the younger generation.
The reason it says, I hate to cut you off, the reason it's funny because it really shook. I'm stuttering just thinking about it.
You always stutter. Do you always think about it?
15 to 20 years. The reason he said, and that's what made me laugh. Like really, one of the things that's in a cold chill up my spine. It takes 15 to 20 years because that's how long it takes to educate a generation.
Right.
You could almost touch on 3 generations, he says, within that 15 to 20 years. So when you get past that point, and he talks about the 60s and 70s, go ahead, I'll let you continue. I'm sorry.
Well, he was referring to, like, that's what they're in right now, is that, because this is 1985, the interview was in. So he's talking about when he defected in 1971 or whatever he said it was. Or 73, one of those dates. And he said, like, he could, back then, he was talking about seeing glimpses of Marxism in the United States. This is 36 years ago, and boy, 15 to 20 years takes us back to 2001, 2002, right in that area, 2004, right after 9/11. And the way, like, even before any of this, you could just tell there was a shift in how everything was perceived in media, in schools. They were much more careful about how they said things, what they did. Like, specifically at like the Muslim religion, ethnicity.
The 15 to 20 year range would be 2001 to 2006. And the reason I bring up that specifically is because you only said 2004, but I'll tell you as soon as you go on the next one why I specified 2006.
Right. It was 9/11 happened, and after that, and it's almost like when you walk out like in October, late October, and you just know it's fall. It's a feel. And not that it's cold. It's just there's a smell in the air. It's just there's a sense you have. There's a shift in what's going on around you. That's what happened after 9/11. There was a shift in everything. Everyone was more careful about what they said and how they said it. Initially, the whole nation was brought together, but then slowly it started to kind of wash away, kind of like a tsunami. Like everything comes in, we're all together, and then it kind of washes away.
Sand on the beach.
Yeah, or everything shifted then. Even wrestling. This is where I started like really noticing it because I was a huge fan of wrestling back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And after 9/11, suddenly they weren't doing so many edgy things. They were careful about what they were saying. They weren't doing different angles. Some angles got completely just cut out like that out of nowhere. Like, what the hell? There was Muhammad Hassan is a big one, who was an awesome wrestler. Me and Richard talked about him before briefly on the episodes, who was he was a Muslim, quote unquote, even though he's from the Syracuse area, I think. Muslim who had a bunch of these masked henchmen with him that would abduct the Undertaker. He had an angle with them, and he had like the it factor. He was going to go somewhere. And then with all the backlash he got because it was a Muslim thing right after this was like 2004 this happened, which is a few years after 9/11, that suddenly disappeared like that. He was let go. Like, you couldn't do certain things anymore. If you rewound the clock from that point to 1990, 1991, we were in Desert Storm. At the same time, we had the Iron Sheik, who was completely like taking on the whole Iraqi like image, and we had Sergeant Slaughter, who back then was the American GI. Back in the 80s,
G.I. Joe.
He was GI. He was in GI Joe. Like that's how GI Joe-esque he was. He was actually in the cartoon. He was an action figure GI Joe. He defected to Iraq. Big heel move in wrestling terminology. Bad guy.
Yep,
heel
I remember
move.
that. I do remember that.
It got over big for the time, but you could do that then. And it wasn't a big deal. Suddenly, after 9/11, you couldn't say certain things. You couldn't do certain things. Suddenly, they pushed. It's like, well, this is insensitive. We can't do that. Maybe this is a stretch, but that seemed to be the part where they started pushing sensitive talk. Don't do that because you're going to hurt this person's feelings, that person's feelings. And they started to pull back the reins on a lot of things. Whereas before, it was like watching a movie, like the Rocky movies, where this big Russian guy was taking
I must curse you.
Yeah. And it's like, if he dies, he dies. Like, that was okay. Because it was acting. It was, whatever. It wasn't a big thing. But suddenly now it was. He talks about the education of students and expose ideology of the enemy to them. And what happens with that after the 15 to 20 years. He says even if you present them with factual information, here it is. Now this is kind of coming back to more modern times in the last year or so. Even if you present them with factual information, look, it's all right here. The Wuhan lab, take that for example. In the beginning of this whole pandemic bullshit, people would be like, well, I think it looks like it might have... Well, first it was from a bat in a wet market over in Japan, just around the corner from the Wuhan lab. And that was the accepted narrative, this is where this originated from. And then some people said, well, the Wuhan lab specifically works with coronaviruses, and it looks like it might have come from that. If you said that on social media, that would be scrubbed from the internet. Whatever you posted would be taken down. You get a strike against you on like YouTube, Facebook. You couldn't say that. And if you did say that on some platform, a talk show or whatever, you were not gone, but you would be the Alex Jones-esque conspiracy theory, aluminum foil hat guy. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Fast forward, luckily now there's a large population now, and I'm being like, you know what? Maybe it did come from Wuhan. And now it's come out to be like, yeah, we think now they're just saying, we think there's a possibility it did come from Wuhan. This is official saying this now. Mm-hmm. Like I've said in other things before, those are one of those things that there's so many things pointing to that one area, and that's crazy conspiracy. But yet UFOs, which are now called unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, that's come out and be like, yes, there are flying things. We don't know what they are. That's accepted, though. That doesn't fucking make any sense to me, but... Yeah, and now, like, the people who oppose the ideas or what are being preached and everything are just squashed.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, really quick. First step, the shift. Going back really quick to what the gentleman was saying in the KGB defector. He's like, back in the 60s and 70s, back in the 60s, you had these half-baked high school dropouts. Now you got them in the positions of power.
Yeah.
And then you try to present them with factual information, and you just can't. It's not true. So when you stop and think about it, 15 to 20 years ago, 2001 to 2006, like you said, the nation came together. And then the edginess went away. And then we had our first black president. So the nation was like, great. And he brought about this wave of sensitivity, not sensitivity, but he brought about this whole new outlook of things. And that's where I specified the 2006, because Barack Obama had become our president at that time. And
in 08, he became president.
No.
Yes.
Wait. He was becoming a name in 2006 to 2007.
Right.
That's why when he got the presidential nomination, it was like, oh, this wasn't a surprise. This guy's got a new approach, a new way to look at things.
Great approach to the young crowd, too, he did.
And the sensitivity aspect of it, taking the edge away. If you read, because I looked into the longer version of it, I started watching that. He talks about how you start to chip away at the things, those pillars.
The foundation of it, yeah.
The strength. No. Specifically of strength. You take away the things that... So, good example. You grow up in a neighborhood with crime. Non-stop. You walk down the streets, you hear gunshots, you think nothing of it. You're desensitized to it.
Right.
We talked about in previous podcasts. You take away the things that make anybody normalized to any opposition. And this may be a stretch. Like you say that a lot.
Keep on.
So you take away everything that could be considered edgy and say, be careful about what you say. You might hurt someone's feelings. What do you have to fight with? You have nothing. You have nothing to go on. Nothing to base your to get passionate over. Mm-hmm. Just, well, if someone said something that hurt my feelings, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to complain. I'm going to break your fucking jaw. You ain't going to be able to complain because I'm going to snap the fucking teeth right out your mouth. And then that person is faced with a choice. Like, do I submit or do I fight? I can't fight. I have nothing to base, no edginess. I have nothing to me. Everything I was raised to think was to be sensitive, be respectful, be courteous.
And do you also think that would also maybe teach whoever, if I put my foot down and stand up, the authority above me is going to squash that, and I'll be in very much trouble. I should just sit back down and do nothing. Maybe that's crazy talk. I don't know, but whatever.
But yeah, so but this is what I mean. Like, this is where my head was going, and maybe we've talked too much about conspiracy theorist stuff. Maybe I should never have gotten into these political discussions with you or started learning about these things. But now my mind is starting to see things. It's like, remember the movie 23 with Jim Carrey? Yeah. It's like, ooh, oh shit, I need to stop. No. I got 23 herpes. I got 23 pairs of shoes.
One, many.
All right, so go ahead, keep going. I'll touch base on more things that I thought about.
I wish this
as you
is
went
even
through the
like
steps.
I don't even think like I'm not like I touch base on a lot of different things. Much like in just interests I have, I touch base on a lot of different things. I only delve deep into a few of them here and there. Like this is one that I listen to, and I just instead of focusing on everything he was talking about specifically to the time when he was in, I focused on what he was talking about and then pretty much just lifted it from 1985 to 2021 and just compare and contrast to that. After he said step 2 is destabilization. That said 2 to 5 years, he said, where ideas of patrons, people that were outside of the group, and the individual are no longer important. So he mentioned that about like I think he was specifically trying to bring up the whole health thing. Like what did he say? Something about like how much you eat and become flabby.
Oh yeah,
anything like that. The only things
America being obese.
Yeah, the only things that are important are the economy, defense spending, and foreign relations. Essential. The essentials only matter. Those to the nation, the state. After that, he says step 3 is a crisis. He said this one may only take 6 weeks. We're in a crisis now. We talk about destabilization of the economy and defense spending, the foreign relations. I mean, we've been involved in that for decades.
Well, real quick, when you stop and think about it, the patron idea, can you read that statement again?
Ideas of the patrons, or the people outside of the government.
So if you're not with the government right now, you're a racist Trump supporter and you're not listened to.
No, I don't. I think what he's talking about is the actual government, like
I know, but
system or foundation itself.
When
you're not inside that, like.
But now people who, when you stop and think about it,
Are you just talking about sympathizers, basically?
Yeah. So if you agree with the government, you are for the vaccine, you're for everything. I'm not even trying to support Trump in this aspect, but anybody who thinks outside of what the government is doing right now is okay, they're a problem, and they're ignored.
Yeah, that would fall in with destabilization too, which would be 2 to 5 years, which we're really in the middle of that now. And if anything is more divided, if the country has ever been divided, it sure is now. After it would be a crisis. And before the coronavirus, we were already divided. You remember the Hillary and the Trump.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's where a major split was really happening. Like, that was noticeable by even people that didn't really pay much attention to politics. That was a major point where everything was split. The crisis pops in now 4 years after that. The coronavirus, or whatever it was, 3 years after that. Now we got a crisis on top of the split in America, which it's been used to even cause a bigger split. So before it was Republican, Democrat, left and right, which has been a running point for a long time. Now you throw in vaxxed and unvaxxed. So now you have the major split, and the vax-unvaxxed split is pretty much the same way, but you also have like these other splits in that, because there's left that are vaxxed and unvaxxed, for and against, and there's right that are vaxxed and unvaxxed, for and against. So now you're splitting it up even more. He said this allows for violent change in power, structure, and economy. I just said earlier that we're going to create $1 trillion coin and add it to possibly create $1 trillion coin and add it to Federal Reserve. If we don't, it could crash our economy, which would cause a restructure in the economy. There's been something out there called the Great Reset, and I'm sure most people have heard about it. Some people will say that's crazy talk, but I'm telling you right now, if you go out there and just pay the fuck attention to everything that's going on in general news, not even dive deep, if that's crazy talk, then your fucking reality that's on news and TV every single night is just as fucking crazy. Right now, if they crash the economy and they come in and restructure it, which they're talking about for the last year, they've talked about a basic universal income. The number that's thrown around is $1,000 a month to everybody, working or not working. This is a real thing. They're talking about this. This is
giving people $1,000.
Giving people $1,000 a month for basically, the way I gather it, or what's been proposed or maybe not even proposed yet, but just floating around as an idea. If you don't want to work, they don't want to make you work. Right there, without even going any further into it, if you say that's not socialism, then you need to go back to fucking school and pick up a dictionary and a history book and just go through that history book, and every term you don't know.
Whoa. You're getting a bit aggressive there. What I need you guys to first do is pull your heads out of your fucking ass. Then get the dictionary. I'm not going to expect you to try to read a dictionary through your own dick hole.
Maybe, I don't even know what you just said. So, yeah, I'll reel it in.
No, God, no, fuck, this is great. That's fucking crazy. I'm loving it.
So, there's something called the Great Reset. What'd I say? I lost complete train.
Destructure, $1,000 a month, work, non-work.
Oh, yeah. All right, yeah. So...
I got you, baby.
What was been said is, if you don't want to work, you shouldn't have to work. Which, to my understanding, the whole American dream, quote unquote, is if you have an idea and you have drive, you can achieve that idea. Nobody said it's going to be easy. Nobody said life is easy. Life is not easy. Making something yourself is not fucking easy. It's not even fair. It never was. Nobody ever told you you'd always be happy. Nobody ever told you life would be fair. Life isn't fair, but it is just. If you put the fucking work in, whether it's tomorrow, the next week, the next year, 10 years, 20 years down the line, you will win. That's part of the thing. You can't just put in 10 minutes. What we say about video games. Nowadays, video games, you pick it up. If you press 6 buttons, you beat the game because it tells you where to go. In the old days...
Half the times you get a trophy just for completing the tutorial.
Yeah.
Which tells you how to play the game.
Yeah. In the old days, if you picked up a game, there was no tutorial. There was no trophies. There was no 6-minute, I just played for 6 minutes. I just got X amount of coins or whatever the hell. You picked up the game, and there was a scoring system, but... I don't really fucking know what people paid attention to that for. But if it was hard and you couldn't do it, you didn't beat it.
Nope.
That was it. Mario, Metroid, Ninja Gaiden, Tutorius. But that
Karate
was
Kid.
And yeah.
That's it. That's all you can do.
I mean, that's a boiled down example here. But there is no like hard, easy, whatever. Life's hard. Life fucking sucks. It's not impossible. You can get through it. You can make your money. To say you're gonna sit here and be like, I don't wanna work. I'll just get paid. That doesn't give anybody an incentive to make better. The thing I brought up, the whole follow your dreams, do whatever spiel, is because the reason why this country and made so many technological improvements and everything is because people had an idea and they busted their ass and they invented things. We took the Wright brothers, who made a giant paper airplane basically fly 10, 20 feet off the ground, and then 50 years later we're on the moon? Because of fucking ideas and hard work. Mm-hmm. Now you take that incentive away from people, a large population of people, there are still going to be people who are going to work because they're going to want more, because I don't believe that's in somebody's DNA to just want to do more. I think there are people that just have it, but I also think, let me rephrase that. It is in people's DNA to just want to do more and achieve, but I also think it's learnable. You can take somebody who has no drive and just show them, hey, you could do more. You could have more.
There's a reward.
Yeah. They'll do it.
I hate to use this really quick, but you just made me think of a good example. Look at the old mice maze, cheese maze. Mm-hmm. Scientists for years have used mice in cheese in a maze you could teach for survival. There's a reward at the end if you put in the extra work and run the maze. Like you just said, life's not going to be easy. It's not easy. It's not fun. It fucking sucks. It's a maze. You got to run through it till you find that cheese.
Yeah, you got to find your way.
Real quick. The Great Reset, that step. The reason I'm
not there yet, but
really quick, when I saw that, when I heard that part, my mind instantly went to, what's this country going to be like when this is all said and done?
That's
the Great Reset. Is it going to
Well,
be...
the Great Reset isn't to do...
Well, when he talked about it, like restructuring the economy.
Right.
What are we looking at? I couldn't think about it. And that's if you watch the longer version, that's part that he touches on that concept. It's yours. If you know it, people have to listen to you. Mm-hmm. If you really listen to the long one. Have you listened to the long one yet? Listen to it because it goes into depth.
I haven't had fucking time to listen.
It goes into it. It's like, if I know how to build a car and you don't, who are you going to go to for a ride?
Right.
Me, because I know how to build the car. I know how to make it work. Restructuring the economy. If for people who have no idea what's going on, they're going to blindly follow who knows what to do.
Exactly. And that's where that's where the government coming in and say, like, well, just give you cash, because that's basically going to make people be like, submit and be like, well, you don't bite the hand that feeds. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting money for free from them. I don't know how to do anything else other than nothing.
Let me follow.
Yeah. So whatever they need me to do, whatever they want, whatever they say, that's what goes. Mm-hmm. That's where I'll just skip to it. The whole Great Reset thing that's not an American thing. That's the whole idea with that is a whole global technocracy. Mm-hmm. That's a one world government, new world order.
I'm done with that.
For life.
NWO.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan should be the president. Just saying.
Oh my God, he would tear. He would. Oh, this country would collapse for sure. Just in civil war.
Look at my 24-inch pythons, brother. Yeah. That doesn't solve the global crisis. It solves the climate change because it's getting hot in here.
You just need steroids or vitamins and prayers.
Eat your Flintstones, kids.
Yeah. That would be a restructure of the economy, a restructure of the government system. And I really believe, because the vaccine passport thing, which I think is horribly dangerous. Never mind vaccines, whatever. Getting a shot, not getting shot. Like, I don't think most people give a shit. It's like, do whatever you want to do. The problem, I think, is the passport itself. A piece of paper that says you can't get into this venue unless you have this card that says your last vaccination date, your last doctor's appointment, the last booster you had. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter how. Again, the woman I talked to today, she was telling me about the vaccine passport. She went down to Barclays Center for something, I don't know what. There was a woman that was in front of her or whatever. I think it was in front of her. Must have been, because she heard the whole conversation. They couldn't get into the Barclays Center because they didn't have they weren't vaccinated. She's like, I spent $400 on this thing, and you're not going to let me in. Didn't have that piece of paper. I'm sorry, that's fucking dangerous. That is dangerous on a multitude of levels, because now you're creating a system where if you don't comply to what they're telling you to do, you don't get these extra things. You don't get this, you don't get that. Again, going back to what we said before, if you're not vaccinated, the VA, by November 1st, if you're a veteran, you don't get your stuff anymore. Comply to what we're telling you, or we're going to take things away. If you don't get vaccinated and you don't have the piece of paper or whatever, the card that says this is what you are, now it's an app on a phone too, I guess, you can't get into these games, basketball, football. You can't do these things. This is going to cause a major split in the nation. Which, again, going back to this whole thing, this demoralization and destabilization, this is causing a huge split in the nation. There are states now who are instituting this Free State Act. Vermont, I think, is one, where they don't want to be involved with anything the rest of the state is doing. So they have appointed officials to pay attention to what they have to pay attention to in the nation, but the people in the state say, we're doing our own thing. So they're part of the nation still, but not really. There's already states that are doing this. There's states, what is it, 63%, what is it, 63% or 50-some% of Republicans or Democrats think that, no, I think I had the number right. I think it's like 63% of the nation thinks their opposing political ideal views should secede from the nation. That's fucking crazy. 63%. 15%, I think it's 15% of Americans said they have cut off ties with friendships strictly because of political affiliation or differences of political opinion. That's fucking crazy. You got a friend that you've had for 10, 15, 20 years, and just because you voted different and have different ideas, man, we can't be friends anymore. Tell me that's fucking, like, Rich.
We're pushing 20.
Rich is a perfect example. He's classic liberal. He's one of my closest friends. But there are people out there that said, you voted different, you think different, you can't be around me, you can't be around my family, you can't be around my kids. So we have, on a micro level, friendships and probably families, I'm willing to bet.
Oh, hell yeah.
Splitting and not talking again. On a macro level, we have states talking about secession, which California has talked about it many times over the years, and I actually wish they would, because they're fucking insane. They're so out there, I don't even know. And that's not even like a conservative talk. That's just, if you look at California and the way they just operate business-wise, you're like, what the hell are you? They got, what would we say? They have all those charitable homeless, feed the homeless things.
Oh, yeah.
Six-figure income bosses and still a tent city that's growing in size. And like, what do you do? It's like, yeah, just, you know what? You could probably just leave. We'll actually take Puerto Rico and just kind of replace you instead of being just a sovereign state or whatever.
Province.
A province of the United States. We'll take California and push you off, and we'll slide Puerto Rico in. I would much rather take Puerto Rico.
It's like a giant puzzle. Let's get this piece out of here.
There's spaces. We'll just fill it in with water and say it's lakes. But again, that goes back to just that's destabilization and just splitting. So then you have that cause throwing a crisis with everything destabilized and crazy. Now you're just shaking up the entire board. That's where you get a structure change. As he put it, a violent change in power, structure, and economy. And this is the point right now where I think we're in. Because we're on this thing. This is why there's so many rallies on both sides. But you see a lot of rallies for the red and everything now about we're not taking this. We're not, whatever, our freedoms. You're not going to violate my freedom. The mandate, which is a lot of blue cities. New York City is the one specifically I was talking about. Because like I said, I was talking today about that whole thing, the vaccine mandate. Or the cards you have to have. And then step 4, he talks about normalization, where everything is treated like nothing's wrong. And that's what he said. This whole thing is basically a war without declaration. We've already been in this war for a long time. This is a war of ideology. This is a war of teaching a young age, you're a victim, things need to change. The system as it is no good. It's not geared toward you. Again, this goes to what we were talking about in the beginning, systemic racism and critical race theory. What it became, not what it was meant to be. That's where we're at. A silent war that's been waged for a long time. Is this insane talk? Maybe. I don't know. But just as someone who listens a lot to it and just kind of tries as hard as I can, I try to take everything in from each side to piece it together. But it seems the extreme left has now caused this blanket cover over Democrats and everything. So when you think of Democrat, you think of liberal, you think of extreme left. So now, like, liberals and everything get stuck in that stigma of being an extreme leftist. That's why you hear all the time libtards and, like, you know, whatever. And if like you really boil classic libertarian down, their ideas are fantastic, of just like freedom of speech and freedom, just freedom of, it's basically a constitutionalist. It's like live and let live. Like, do your thing, stay out of my deal, I'll stay out of your deal.
But that's just it, with the way, like we were just talking about with the defector and the steps, that you'll never find that balance, because when it comes down to it, constitutionalists or not, someone's going to feel they deserve something that they haven't earned. And I feel I should know what you're doing because it might affect me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's none of my business, you're trying to say. But then that's not fair. So now we reignite it all over again. It starts back from square one. This is something I was thinking about as we were just talking now, and it's kind of, I think this is something that comes along, and it's like a cycle, a vicious cycle, like it.
Oh, for sure.
Pennywise the Clown.
For sure.
I think that this is something, and
that's why they always preach in school. It's like, if you don't know history,
if you
change history. If you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Exactly.
And this is for sure a cycle. It just seems to, I think the reason why it's so prevalent is, again, because of social media. It's so easy to get this information
in that
out.
general aspect too. I mean, is it really just because of social media, or is it because we're the adults in the situation, in the equation now? 30 years ago, when this was starting, or when the last time this happened, or whatever you want to think, when we were born in 1984, this has already been going on. You think somebody wasn't sitting in there in an office or in a room drinking a beer with their war buddies, saying the same things, but not modernized as we are,
for sure,
that we are right now? I'm thinking, I really and like to see, I don't know, fucking head is spinning.
No, I think
right now, just thinking
for
about
sure.
it.
I know what you're saying. I think for sure. Yeah, like I said, I think the only difference between all these past, like, whatever, how many cycles of years is social media.
Yeah.
Like back then, you got all your information either by word of mouth or from the newspaper or the news later on.
Depending on how it was directed. Left news or right news.
Well, I don't think there was left and right news back then.
No, 20 years ago, 30 years.
No. I'm talking like 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
News was news. You turn on the TV, this was what was being reported. It wasn't really until after the 60s. Yeah. It wasn't until after then. It wasn't until 60 Minutes, especially, when they discovered that news equals ratings. So then with ratings, with the people in 60 Minutes they were getting emotional responses. Then they figured out, hey, if we report news for an emotional response instead of giving information and informing the public, now we've created people going, you know what? He's right. Fuck that guy. He doesn't think this way. Or why is he doing it like that? That's bullshit. I got to tune in tomorrow. Make sure he says the right thing. So now they're generating. So now they're not even fucking.
Like Howard Stern.
Yeah. They're not even reporting information anymore. They're reporting vague information, but with a lot of opinion in it. So if you tune into Fox, you get a lot of right-wing opinion. Who turns into Fox? People who are very right. And they're going to be like, well, I think Fox tells the truth, but all these other ones don't. But then you talk to someone on the left, and they're like, MSN, CNN. I think they're pretty biased in what they talk about, or not biased. They're pretty objective in what they talk about. But Fox is fucking crazy because it's all talking points. All they do is give you a generic topic of what they're talking about, spin it to however their angle is gonna see it from, and then deliver it. So you go, what the fuck is the other tie? What are they doing? What are they, crazy? What, all these people that are voting that way? They must be retarded. Like that's what you get.
The average Howard Stern fan listens for 4 hours every day. Why? Because they want to hear what he has to say next.
Yeah.
The average anti-Howard Stern fan listens for 8 hours a day. What? Why? Because they want to hear what he has to say next.
Most common answer given? Yeah. I just kind of getting off that topic now. I am getting off that topic, but I don't even remember what topic that was.
We were talking about the defector and
all right.
the cycling.
So yeah, so that's that. You said you're not getting the vaccination, right?
No,
I'm kind of getting tired talking about the vaccination, but I did find this, which I thought was interesting. This is a small point. A lot of people are saying they're not getting it and they're going to use either morale or religious exemption from it because it has fetal and embryonic cell lines, stem cells. Here's the thing I found out. And if they use this argument, which could work for them, and they'll get that, but if they use that argument, here's the problem. Tums, Tylenol, X-Lax, ibuprofen, Sudafed, Preparation H, Claritin, and a laundry list of other over-the-counter medications use embryonic or fetal cell lines. So if you're going to say, I'm not taking this vaccination because specifically it has stem cells, fetal or embryonic stem cells in it, well, now you can't take any of the other ones because then your argument is completely invalid. I found that out, like, oh boy, they're
Really
going to be
quick.
pissed when they find that one out.
You're going to love this. I saw on TikTok, I saw a video, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because of what you just brought up. You know how, like, take the guns, abolish the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy, and I actually asked a military friend of mine. He very active, very hoorah, which nothing but the utmost respect. I thank him very much for his service, give him the respect he deserves, and he's actually a pretty cool dude to talk to. He actually goes, Charlie, on a very stretched level, it does make sense. And that kind of was like, huh? He's like, is it the case? No. But when you stop and read the fine print, there could be some grounds to it. I'm like, that's fucked up. When you look at the vaccine, it's genetically altered DNA. Mm-hmm. It's got stuff, genetically altered DNA or genes in it, whatever. The civil rights are based on what? Humanity. Mm-hmm. Getting the vaccine, getting genetically altered cells, genetically modified cells, injected into your body, technically constitutes as no longer fully human. Mm-hmm. And human rights only apply to those who are human. So one of the conspiracy theorists the guy was talking about, he's a conspiracy theorist, he's like, that's why they're pushing the mandate so bad. They have to get everyone vaccinated because then on a certain level, a very low level loophole, they can come in and take what you have and you cannot say no because they have you on file as having genetically modified human genomes or whatever it is.
That's not where I thought you were taking this. Just as crazy.
And that's
it's not. I thought you were going to bring up the whole human-animal hybrid thing, which is also out
Splice. Good movie.
Basically, yeah. Because what's brought up is there's human rights, basic human rights.
Yep.
And there's basic animal rights.
Yep.
But now you got human-animal hybrids, which, I mean, they take pigs and grow human organs in them. Mm-hmm. That would be considered a human-animal hybrid. Huh. That's a gray area. There are no rights there. Which, that whole idea, I mean, much like any technology, we have the power to do this. It's a red button thing. Do we push it or don't we push it? Right now, it's just, oh yeah, we're growing a liver or whatever they're growing, a heart. But they have the ability to create human-animal hybrids to, like your buddy or whatever was saying, just alter DNA so slightly to where it no longer is actually human. So we can pretty much, the Constitution is, the Nuremberg Code is interesting.
It's
again maybe crazy talk, but like I said, I like going down these rabbit holes and then like going like, fuck it, let's just go all the way.
When you stop and think about it, as terrible as this is going to sound, one of the most brilliant ideas a person ever had to running a country was disarm them.
Yeah.
Evil person. But
Castro, Australia, we've brought that up many times. They have
Hitler. One of Hitler's main points was disarm them, then you control them. How do you, when you've got a country that is as divided as ours is right now, and you've got people to the point now where you've got military who are saying, I'll lead. Mm-hmm. I have no problem leading. The military is overstaffed and undertrained.
Right.
And you have veteran veteran military saying this. The military, the United States military right now is overstaffed and undertrained. When you've got veteran military saying they're willing to lead a fraction, or whatever you want to call them, a militia, a faction of civilians that you can train up and defend yourself with, I mean...
Well, look at it this way.
That's how this country was founded.
Right. If you have...
It wasn't 11 billion people. It was 1,000 people who decided, fuck this, fuck King George or King Richard, whoever it was. And
look at Nam. We got the shit kicked out of us by a bunch of farm boys who just hid in foxholes and like dug tunnels and just...
really quick, it's funny that you bring that up. It's not that we... There was a few factors that we lost Vietnam for.
There were many factors we lost.
The biggest
Vietnam.
three?
But I mean, the basic idea is we had this power, superpower, quote unquote, was supposed to be. We kicked ass in World War II. We kicked ass in World War I. And then we go into this small, poor country, and they just run amok.
Well, the thing, so there's three main components that played into our. Whoa, we messed up. Let's pull out. One, we
got bamboozled into it.
We got swindled into it. Yeah. Two, they were willing to do things we weren't, and it's.
What do you mean, like ATM or something?
Now, okay, so.
Yeah, all right, whatever. You win. I'm out.
You hear about it. Okay, good example. They would cut open a dog, sow explosives into this dog, and send the dog over to the American troops. Now
they would do that. They would do that to kids.
Kids. I was going to use the children. Civilians. I hate to say it. Yeah. They used children. A former friend of mine, may he rest in peace, he took his own life. Used to work with at Target. He suffered severe post-traumatic stress disorder because during a firefight going through a town, yes, over in Afghanistan, he went to rescue a child out of the street in the crossfire. Upon getting taking the child, securing the child, passed him on to his friend to go back with his squad. Or go back with his other buddy who was in the street under fire. Before he made it out of the alley that he was giving the child to the troops, he just turned. Boom, the child had explosives rigged to him.
Really,
took out a few soldiers, good friends of his. Rest in peace. He suffered severe post-traumatic stress disorder from it.
But
PTSD.
Again, that's using kids as basically weapons, walking weapons.
And he suffered a lot. Like
right.
He
which I think anyone can understand.
Well, I won't go. I'll move on.
Right.
And the third thing was we did not have the support we had for every other country.
Absolutely.
When
not.
we went over to Nam, it was you guys are being bullies. We're Americans. We should not be in there fighting their battles for them. That's funny. Just because it was on our soil or it involved our troops with World War I, World War II, and prior to that, we're supposed to be the superpower. We're supposed to be defending countries that can't defend themselves. Right. That's why we're over there. You shouldn't be messing with other people's countries.
Unfortunately for the soldiers, they're the one that caught the the brunt of it. They came back. I mean, and people throw shit at them and stuff.
Child killers, fucking country rapists, whatever. They stick the dick right in the dirt, rape a country.
Right. Like they got this. Like you're pointing your focus at the wrong people here.
They were just doing what they were told. Yeah.
That was Well, so was Nazi Germany. So that. So that's a bad.
That's a bad way to lead it.
Yeah.
No, but that's it. We got tricked into it. They were willing to do things we weren't. Because when it comes down to it, who would you rather fight? Someone who's got everything to lose or someone who has nothing to lose? I'd rather fight someone who's got something to lose because they're the ones who are going to hold back because they don't want to get killed.
Speaking of people that got something to lose, did you hear that the Dollar General down here is supposedly not getting a new shipment of anything in for the next 3 or 4 weeks?
Why?
all those crates that are sitting off the shores.
Oh, I heard about that. I did hear about crates.
Millions of product. I think billions of dollars, something like that. But there is millions of products just sitting out there because the ports are understaffed. One reason I've learned today too is because the shipping
Units?
barges that come in are way bigger than the ports can handle. But now they have all these crates sitting out there, just products sitting out there. So store shelves are empty.
Starting to lighten up.
Oh yeah, starting to lighten up again.
I've heard that. I didn't know about the Dollar General in our area, but I have heard of store shelves starting to wean down on supplies.
When I went into the warehouse, when I gave my 2 weeks, a month or so ago, I walked in and the meat section of the warehouse, perishable,
This big.
it was this big,
That's
and
a lot of meat.
I fit it.
Little humor for y'all.
The meat section down there, it's 5 aisles. The first aisle was completely bare. I walk it. The only other time I ever saw that was right when COVID first hit, and everyone was. We did
Buying
record
up
sales.
everything.
Down.
Yeah.
I'd only saw that. Now that was over a year ago. So it filled back up. But I went down there, put in my 2 weeks, and that was bare again. The next aisle over was probably half bare. And I asked one of the Lyft drivers to go, well, what's the deal? Why? Because, again, I hadn't been there in like 3 months after I got hurt. So I was like, why is everything empty? He goes, can't get anything in. I'm like, that was the start of it, of me actually, why can't we get something in? And then a couple weeks later, that's when I learned, a couple weeks ago, that all these shipping containers just sitting off the coast of Cali. Sitting there, not being, I was like, why? It's like, one is no truckers. There's a severe shortage of truckers in the States. Two, and this isn't just the States, this is worldwide. I mean, it's just like over in California, there's like 19 or 27 or some fucking like huge barges sitting out there with millions of like product just sitting there, not coming in. So yeah, there's no way to ship the product. When they get it into the stores, this is the thing I saw today. They're like, well, there's no place to store all the product. In the article I was reading today, they said one is because of shipping, 2 is because there's not enough warehouse space to store. Now, pardon me, but I just fucking came from a warehouse. There was a lot of fucking space to store shit. So I get the not enough truck drivers, because that's been a plague for way before the pandemic. There just wasn't enough truck drivers on the road. But when you tell me there's not enough space to store, now I can't speak for all the other warehouses and factories and whatnot out there, but I can speak for what I've seen. And what I've seen is that there's a lot of free space open there up on those shelves. And if you walk to a lot of stores, there's a lot of empty and blocked up shelves. Just make it look. But if you take some product down, there's a lot of shelf space that hasn't been filled up.
Well, here's another thing too, and you know, when I stop and think about it, I was in the warehouse gig when I really started learning about brick and mortar, the brick and mortar stores, the actual stores, not online shit. You know, the actual outlet stores that you go to, like the Walmart, the Target, the Amazon store, what if they even have one, Dollar General, Family Dollar, take your pick. A lot of places like that were renovating and getting rid of their back storage because they would have too much sitting in the back not getting sold.
Right.
Because it wouldn't leave the shelf. So, with that being said, that put a lot more back into the warehouse.
Right.
Well, now that the warehouses are empty, the stores they only have, when they get stuff in, it's right to shelf. They don't have the room to store anything. So you've got that never-ending flow coming in. So you're never going to fill your warehouses up. You can't say, like you just said, you can't use the warehouses, not have enough storage room. If it leaves as soon as it hits the warehouse, that's another empty rack.
Right. But then if it hit the warehouse, it presumably would be at the store. But yet all these stores have tons of empty spots. So that's what I don't get. Again, like I said, that was just reading the article. It said there's not enough warehouse space. It's like, well, not according to what I've seen. The truck thing, though, I completely get that. And apparently, if they say, well, these docks can't take in all this product because the shipping is whatever, and I guess a majority of these docks that take in all this product, they're working with a crew that's like only running 60 to 70%, the amount of people they need, which that alone can cause problems, especially dealing with that amount. So I'm sure they have hundreds of people there. So
oh yeah.
So that's the whole
little side note. Something somebody said in mocking Biden wise, I thought was kind of cool because it in all this negative, it's like there's a little positive that actually came from Biden.
I think we need positive after this fucking episode, because this episode, if there's not a lot of red wrists out there after this episode, I don't know.
That they were talking about how Biden has been going on his little stint about being successful, about the numbers going up for vaccinations. And the one video I saw, I actually looked into it and I'm like, well, I mean, it is true. Biden said, the certain areas went from 65% to 95%.
I know exactly what you're going to talk about.
So
I saw this.
You're fired.
No shit.
You fired all the people that weren't vaccinated. So, of course, your numbers go from 65% to 95%.
Yeah. He's like, no shit. It's like a math wizard.
I was like, well, I guess things are going good or better.
I did see that. I was like, wow, that's special. I was like, that's not really something to be proud of.
It was a joke. I thought that would be funny. A little light on the darkness, No, but I don't know. This shit's fucking.
It's again, it's a fun time. You know what else is fun?
It's fucking crazy, man. It's scary because someone very close to my situation now has had to get the vaccine, and this person is not happy. But all they can think about is providing. Mm-hmm. They have to provide. And this person says they've never felt more defeated in their life. With something as simple as a vaccine. Now, this person had actually said at one point they were doing the research, they were looking at the sciences, and they were starting to see a benefit from the vaccine. They hadn't fully agreed with getting it, but they had said they were starting to see the value. So then this person, at that point, hadn't decided to get the vaccine yet. They weren't 100% anti-vax, but they weren't even 5% for the vax. Got told, look, as your employer, you have a date. Get it, or you're terminated. And this person literally came home, went home that night, sat down, and the next day went to the local pharmacy and got the first shot. And actually getting to be able to sit down and speak with this person, I could see the defeat. I joke about like, oh,
now he's got a penis in his armpit.
Oh, you gotta. Oh, I make the jokes like, oh, the fire that died inside. My soul. I'm crying on the inside. I make jokes all the time about that shit. That's what you all watch me for. You love me for it.
Look, he's miserable and he's still happy. It's possible.
But I mean, having seen a lot of shit in my own lifetime. I mean, a lot of shit. I've seen some stuff, but to see it like
he means ATM, like I said before.
Ask my vag. No, and she tamed me with her mouth and 2 other places in an order that would surprise you. Ask my vag. Batman. Yes. No, but to actually genuinely see a good-spirited person who wasn't anti-government, who wasn't anti-vax, who wasn't anti-Black Lives Matter, wasn't anti-Trump, wasn't anti-Biden, none of that stuff. They kind of they had that worldview of, well, hey, you know what? I put in my work. I take care of my family. At the end of the day, I treat everybody with respect and as equals. That's about all I can do.
Right.
But to see that little hint of defeat in their eyes, I was like, that's something. Yeah,
which I get that. I completely get being put in that scenario. For anyone in that scenario that doesn't really want to get it, though, I'll tell you this, and I've told many people this in person. There's money out there to be made on the table. You just got to find it.
Yeah.
There's avenues around here that you don't need any vaccination to get. You just got to just logically think, keep your eyes open, and look around. Like there's a couple venues I've seen be like, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that.
Like the I forgot who made it. The cartoon, the animation movie Robots. Remember that one with Robin Williams? He's the crazy robot, does the whole Britney Spears bit.
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh, it's funny. Check it out, Robots. It's actually a good cartoon movie. Well, animation, whatever. The one main character, he grows up wanting to be an inventor. Mm-hmm. And his idol is the man... Something Bottom was the guy's name. He's like, find a need and fill it.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Like you said, there's money to be made.
There's always money. I mean, if you have any idea or whatever, there's always money to be made.
On that note, call it.
Let's go, Brandon.
Yeah. Whatever that is.